Hello there, good evening and welcome back to Celtic World Order podcast. As always, I'm Steve O'Matt. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you back here for the channel for a new wee video. One that I guess came out of nowhere because such is the way as the Celtic do communication or lack thereof. It wasn't until they saw that 11th hour that they dropped something on us, of course, but they'd done it without any level of fanfare. What was it, you might ask? Well, if you haven't known already, it is, of course, the long-awaited accounts. Basically, the numbers that they have to hide behind, that they've tried to hide behind, and now, as they've come out, there isn't really many places for them to hide or more excuses to be had because they make familiar reading. Lots of money, where has it been spent? And I can't think of somebody better to have to join me on the channel to talk about that than a man that needs no introduction in the Celtic fan media and blogging world. Is, of course, James Forrest. James, how are you tonight, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm not bad. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
No problem at all. I'm sure that this kind of thing is right up your alley, as we know that you like to give a couple of home truths, and you are well versed. So I can't think you're a better person to sit here and pick over this wee publication that the club slid out at the back of 6 tonight than your good self. Any surprises with what the reading presented to you at all?
Not a single surprise, especially the timing. They were always going to do this on a Friday. I'm just surprised that they didn't wait till Saturday, but I guess they've got to follow stock exchange procedures and whatnot with this one. They will have filed that with the stock exchange earlier in the day, and they'll have had to announce it the night. But it's no surprise it comes on a Friday when everybody's focused on the football, when a lot of people are out at the pub. Week's ended, work's finished, and a lot of people just want to relax, and so they dropped this one on us so we're going to get proper scrutiny. But of course, it will get scrutiny, even if it takes a couple of days. Every fan media outlet is going to pull this thing apart.
That is it, and I'm sure we should do our best to try and do that tonight if we can. What I'll do is I'll do a wee bit of screen sharing for you that might be joining us that haven't saw it. We'll bring up the key headline points, and I'll obviously invite James to give us his thought on it. And we'll back and forward. Do get in the comments if you have any thoughts on it. Let us know. But as well, before we crack on, as we always do, the wee bit of housekeeping. You know by now. Welcome back to the channel. Make sure you hit subscribe. It costs you absolutely nothing. All our content is completely free. We used to say it was the same price as a Rangers transfer, but we can't say that anymore because they spend money and we don't. But our content is free. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and get us elsewhere on our socials. In the description below, you'll get that. And of course, go and check out James and his good work that he does with Celtic blog and everything else. That pesky, one of those pesky fan media ones, telling the truth, how dare he, out of order. But that's another one, and we'll go on to that. So listen, before we bring up the accounts, before we bring up the things, it gives us an opportunity, and we'll read this right. We've been doing a wee bit where we like to have a wee laugh and a wee jive. We says, Scottish football, Celtic tin pottery. Well, this statement gives us a brilliant example of tin pottery, and it comes from Mr. Peter Law's statement, where it says, and I refer you to, this led to a high-profile playoff against Bayern Munich, where we exited the competition by a single goal following that aggregate 2-1 defeat. Really, Peter, did you watch that game? Did you watch the games? I mean, I know it's a bit of a laugh there, but James, come on, it just sort of sums up what we're talking about, isn't it? Fingers on the pulse.
It absolutely does. It nails it, actually. Because, you know, it doesn't matter whether you think that Peter Law is the puppet master who runs the Celtic boardroom, or whether you think that the guy gets paid just for showing up at meetings and for signing that document. Yeah, if all your job is to sign that document, you should at least make sure that the facts in that document are accurate. And that is a beauty of a myth. That is a beauty of a miss. I remember Phil McGillivan telling me a few years ago that the Ian Bankier press conference, the unveiling of Ian Bankier as chairman, that he asked him straight up what the first Celtic game he remembered being it was, and Bankier completely flapped, and I think he referenced a game that he got every detail right. So this is up there with that. That's, you would think that a guy with Celtic in his blood would have maybe known that fact.
World-class basics. I mean, that's what it is, isn't it? We can't even get a statement right, and you expect us to take you seriously? Come on. I mean, I know we're nitpicking, but what do you expect? That's what we're here to do. We're here to nitpick. Well, anyway, I'll bring up a wee bit of screen sharing action. We'll run through it, of course, and you guys can see it out there, and I'll let you talk us through it then. James, so let's see what we've got here. We're going straight on. You can go straight on there. You also get a bit that's a wee bit more technical. It's the actual facts and the figures, and the balance sheet's broke down as a single downloadable document that you can peruse over. However, here we go. The key summary there, they like to start off with the good stuff. Remember, we win trophies. We always win, so just forget the rest of it underneath. Winning, participation, achieving 12 points. Yep, we know that. We know we got to the knockout stages. Peter doesn't know how that one ended out, but we did do it there. Anyway, this is the bit. Key financial. Group revenue, an increase of 15.2% to 143.6 million, which, as you can see, is up from 124.6 last season. Operating expenses, labour, are up by 11.1 to 117.1. As you're saying, see from the last figure, 105.4 million the 24. Gain on sale player registrations, 31.5 million versus 6.6 million. Acquisition of player registrations, 38.6 as opposed to the 16.6. Profit before tax, 45.7 million. Well, in case it was 17.8 into 2024, and profit after tax. That's the one everybody likes. 33.9 million versus 13.4 million in 2024. And the big one, end of year cash, 77.3 million versus 77.2 million. So there's not actually a lot of change there. Now, talk me through what jumps out on the page there, if anything, to yourself, James.
Well, there's quite a lot there, actually. The sale of players obviously doesn't include some recent ones.
Yep.
Because that number should be higher. The profit before tax is enormous. That's huge. That is a consequence of having all the extra Champions League games, the two games during the groups, the two home games, the extra home games during the groups and the qualifier, and the second stage game.
Yep.
That money is gone, of course, this season because we didn't make it. So for the sake of, I don't know, messing about for a few million here and a few million there, we've left some of that money on the table, quite a bit of it, actually. Yep. We'll find out just how bad at some future stage, but that number will go down significantly. Profit before tax is huge. Profit after tax is fairly huge. Year-end cash, I'm not so surprised at, because we have spent some money in Lennoxtown. And I always thought the idea that we were going to put an extra 25% revenue in the bank was a bit OTT. I don't know why some people thought that we would suddenly have an extra £25 million to bank. But the number that jumps out at me is actually the tax.
Yes.
We paid 12 million in tax this year. You have Law in the statement boasting about how we broke the club transfer record twice. Well, the money we just gave to HMRC, and I'm not knocking that, right? Because we know a lot of clubs don't pay their taxes, and I'm quite proud that ours does.
Yes.
That's more money than we've ever spent on a player, ever, in our history, that we just gave the taxman this year, needlessly, when we have a Champions League qualifier.
Talking, I will bring that up, the bit that if people are wondering what that is, this is attached to the bottom. There's this wee document here, and you can carry on, James, and I'll go through it. It just shows you the key operations. Then you start getting in to the nitty-gritty part, and there is facts and there's figures, and it points out your tax and everything else that you're talking about. Yes, and there's a lot of money being needlessly given away. Remember, we said that we shouldn't be giving that away, that it'd be better to be spending that. It just, here we are again, eh?
So, yeah, I mean, we've gone at the Champions League because we wanted to haggle with clubs like Go Ahead Eagles or a couple of million quid. And we just gave a taxman 12 million and gone at the Champions League. It makes no sense. They're defending this, and the two statements, the Log statement and the Nicholson statement, have defended this as part of the strategy that's kept us in this great place for the last 20 years. Those 20 years include 11 qualification rounds where we've gone out 7 times, 5 of them in a row. And this is why. This is exactly why. This is why we're here. This is why the fan media movement has. This is why the fan movement has popped up. This is why fans are in an uproar, and they're protesting because they can see what's going on here. They can see that we're giving money to the taxman when there are holes all over the team. Rodgers at the press conference today had to defend playing Barrowfield on the left, which isn't on the right, which isn't his natural position. Because we don't have another player to play there. And the tax man got 12 million quid. That's mad.
That's crazy.
There's no universe in which that makes any sense, in which anybody on the board should be defending that as a strategic decision. It's insane.
Oh, the thing is, we find ourselves in this position. We say one thing and we do the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, as you've alluded to, some of these accounts, there will be stuff that isn't accounted for. We had player sales after it. This only goes up to the sort of period up until sort of June. So there's plenty of things there. And then when you read through the statement, as you say, it's just to really sort of put on that, it's absolute gibberish. It's the same garbage that we've heard from ages. Now, you hear that, there's a wee sort of clip it from the wording of Peter Wall. The board shares the ambition of our supporters to see the strongest possible team in the pitch and will continue to balance short-term performance with long-term financial stability. And we must factor in long-term implications of all decisions made today. This strategy is vital to Celtic and has been pivotal over the last 20 years. Okay, let's have a look at that then. Long-term implications on all decisions made. What about the long-term implications of, as you just rightly pointed out, the fact that we have failed yet again to tool ourselves up for the Champions League, to get back in, something that we boast about, how well we've done there and that one there. We've not done that there. We've not done that in seasons gone by. So the long-term implications are, we're seeing them right now, from historical failings to get into the Champions League. Why? Because we could have been there more often. We probably would have had a far better team on the pitch. We would have had a better coefficient and so on and so forth. So they're talking about things that they have already failed about. The decision of our long-term implications have already failed many, many seasons ago. And now it just feels like we're potentially, if we don't get our act together, in another cycle of that happening. We had the luck where we had the instant qualification for a wee bit. That's long gone. Long gone.
Yep. And the worst it is, right, because you just said it, right, there are long-term implications for this, potentially very serious ones. Because of the financial sustainability regulations. Now, we weren't anywhere near being in violation of those financial sustainability regulations, but failing to qualify for the Champions League reduces the amount of income we have, which reduces the amount we can spend. The 70% cap remains the same no matter what you're earning, and ours just went down. Our margin for error just dropped dramatically. And so that means that next season, for next summer, they have to be even more cautious and they have to be even more thrifty and watch every single penny. And that jeopardises our qualification again.
Yep.
But if the club across the city gets its act together, we're jeopardising more than that. Because the season after that, there isn't a second Scottish team in the Champions League. And in fact, the team that finishes second will have to qualify for the Conference League. And that's a cataclysm if that's us. That's a cataclysm.
Yes.
You're talking about cutting the budget by 20 or 30% just to stay in FSR. It's madness. And that's a risk we've took this year. Absolute lunacy.
I mean, do you think that with the squad, let's just talk about trying to scrape back some credibility on the European front with what we've got? We know that fans are talking about boycotting it, and rightfully so. That's where we find ourselves. We find ourselves in the Europa League now. The big question is just looking at, we know that the money that you get from the Europa League is nowhere near the money you'll get from Champions League. However, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be going out and trying to make a good fist off it. They've gambled by not getting into the Champions League. We've found ourselves in the Europa League, and even at this moment in time, I feel that we are still underqualified, we're under-equipped to go and tackle that appropriately. Do you see us getting any level of purchase in Europa League, making a good fist at it, getting through to that qualification round, maybe even if we're lucky, finishing in the top half that gets you direct through without that second qualification round, where maybe, just maybe, that this board do something in January? Because I think we're at least 2-3 transfer windows behind and where we should be.
It's astonishing, actually, to say that. And it's even more astonishing that it's accurate. We've really got ourselves in a bit of a spot here. Because if you look at the squad that we've got to go into that tournament, we need to be very, very lucky in terms of squad depth. Because if we get more than a handful of injuries, we'll have a real problem.
Yeah.
Right now, we don't have anybody to play on the right side of the pitch. Nobody who can do it regularly and do it for 90 minutes. I know James will run himself out of the ground, but we can't rely on James Forrest at 33, 34 to carry us through a campaign like that. We can play players out of possession. I suppose we could put Balakwisu out there. He's already said today that there is no way that he will play Maeda out there. So if we get an injury, even just a couple of the top players, we're in a lot of bother. We've already got a situation at right back where we've got a young academy kid getting thrown out of these games and expected to perform. And I think Donovan's a good player, and I hope he does really well for us. And I hope that this is a big opportunity for him. He can nail that second spot in the squad. If he can prove that he's a better player than Ralston. It's a big ask to ask him to be a better player than AJ, but if he can prove he's a better player than Ralston, he will nail the second spot in the squad. But it's an enormous thing to put on his shoulders when he was playing in the Lowland League last season to ask him to step up and play in the Europa League. And that's the state we've got ourselves into. It's absolutely bonkers. We've got the same problem we'll face the same problem with centre back. We'll face the same problem if we lose a striker. The squad shouldn't have so many holes in it that you're worried about stuff like that. But this is where we are.
Well, the kind of thing is,
really unbelievable.
When you read through that statement, there's a lot of mention about investment, and we'll briefly touch on the Barrowfield development and about the youth team and things like that. Now, you spoke about Donovan. I think that's kind of actually funny when they so heavily lap up all the investment in the future, and then they talk to us and they point out the likes of Cal McGregor and Kieran Tierney and James Forrest has been rip-roaring success, and you kind of think to yourself, is that it? Is that what we are celebrating? Like, come on. But they will probably look at it, and we look at it with the sensible eyes of, one, it's good to see guys like Donovan getting in. Of course, let's hope he's got it. Guys like Dane Murray, let's hope that they've got it. However, see, part of the board, as daft as this sound, they would probably be like, oh, I really hope they are brilliant, right? Because they can be the next poster boy for this brilliant development and investment that we've got in the club. But coming back to these statements, there's two bits that I want to single out, and I want your opinions on them. Now, of course, the first one is from the mouth of everybody's favourite pal, Big Pedro, who's probably, I think that it's fair to say, has been identified as the coward. I don't think you or I or anybody else need to really sort of do any great detective work to work out who that is. But the tone of some of these things, I sort of think to myself, this is ridiculous. The first one here that he says is, we recognise and share the frustration and disappointment of our supporters in respect to the timing of some of the incoming acquisitions. We will always look to improve how we operate and overcome challenges. He then talks about guys that have come in, guys that have come out, but this is the best bit. Looking forward, myself and the executive team will continue to represent the club at the highest level of domestic and European football. Given the financial disparity that now exists across European leagues, it is vital that the interests of Scottish football are represented to ensure that we are not only able to maintain our position, but also to grow and take advantages of the continued global expansion of football. Now, James, see, for me, we all expect him to be ousted. We expect him to be the sacrificial lamb, if you will.
Yep.
That sounds like a guy that says, excuse my French, fuck you, I'm going nowhere.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It does. Yeah, it absolutely sounds like that. It sounds like a message for the rest of them and all that. None of them are going anywhere, and they don't intend to adapt, change, or anything. I mean, they talk about the changing face of European football. Maybe he's not noticed, but that's been ongoing already for all of those 20 years that he's talking about.
Yep.
And we're paying roughly the same money and for individual transfer fees that we were paying 20 years ago. Yeah. So the game has moved one direction, and we've either stayed still or we're actively trying to move in the other direction. Because, of course, if you've been reading the runes right, next season the plan is going to look very, very different than it does right now. And some of that, by the way, is going to be self-imposed, because to a certain extent we're going to have to work with a lot less money. The plan next season seems to be to try and do a data-led signing policy of players in the £2 to £3 million range, when football is moving in exactly the opposite direction. So when they're talking about evolving, we're devolving. We're not moving forward. We're moving backwards. And that's the strategy that they think is going to make us credible. That's a strategy that may get us caught by your domestic competitors, let alone anybody in Europe.
Yeah, I mean you've got to look at guys like even Hearts. I mean, I'll be honest, when I first saw that interview with Mr. Bloom, and he sort of was telling us about how I'm doing all this, and I'm going to, he looked at a creepy wee puppet out, Pinocchio or something like that, John. He was sitting there telling us about how they were going to go and wants to win the league within 5 to 10 years, and thought, you're off your head, mate, you're mental. But this is a guy that's coming into a club who have significantly less resources than us, and they are actually trying to evolve. They are trying to punch above, and they are investing more than they normally would. Whereas Celtic, as you rightly say, we continue to do the same thing and expect the exact same results. And I think that's the most frustrating thing about it. And we're looking at things here, coming back to the secondary statement, which is attached to all the facts and the figures from Nicholson. He basically says, our objective each year is to reach the Champions League. Unfortunately, this season, we suffered a loss on penalties in the tie against Kairat Almaty, resulting in Europa League entry instead. As a board, we take responsibility for the failure to achieve this key objective and commit to improving going forward. Talks about who we're going to play and how they're looking forward to it. And this is the best bit. Aligned to our core objective of competing in the Champions League is successful player trading. Last year, we invested record sums between transfer fees and first-team player wages. This year, regrettably, we didn't achieve these objectives in the transfer window, and we share and understand the supporters' disappointment and frustration. And we'll continue to seek to review and improve our strategy and execution in the market as we continue to evolve. Where is this evolution that this guy's talking about? This is the guy that behind them's got a post-it that says, communicate to fans. But I think to be fair, as daft as it sounds, it's waffle, it's garbage, right? It's red meat thrown it to the sort of people that walk around with their rosy specs on and they'll just eat it up, right? But the two statements, Wall's faux pas about no knowing the scores for aside, it's the first time where they've actually put out a statement where they have used language as false as it is. It's so transparent. They don't mean it. But it's the first time they've actually sounded remotely sorry. Think of the statement that they put out. There wasn't a crumb, a shred of trying to atone for the wrongdoings. This one here, it sounds a bit more like we understand, but it's just waffle. And seeing LSD come out and have direct, context, a bit of chat where there's proper dialogue with the fans, whether it's an in-person thing or otherwise, it's just words written on a paper, and their partners in the back and saying, look, we'll learn for it. No, when's this change going to happen? As you say, somebody needs to go yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, I remember reading something that Albert Speer said years after the Second World War. And an interviewer asked him, like, you're obviously an intelligent man. You're obviously like, you're not the kind of person who should have been seduced by a guy like Hitler. And Speer said, but the whole of Germany was seduced because all Hitler did was he spoke in empty platitudes. And the thing about empty platitudes is that every single person who hears them can ascribe their own meaning to them. So they hear what they want to hear. And that's exactly what these guys do to us all the time. All the time. The statement is so bland and it's so flat and it's so empty of any real meaning that people read it and hear what they want to hear in it. And they just fob us halfway all the time. There isn't a single thing in that statement that suggests that they recognise what the mistakes were and they aim to fix them. There isn't a single thing in there that suggests that they even recognise that they did something wrong. It's all about how things just didn't fall away, and you know what I mean. It's all about we were unlucky here and we were unlucky. There's no sign that these people recognise that the strategy that Law's boasting about, the 20-year strategy, is exactly the problem. Yeah, a strategy that's not evolved in 20 years, defending it. This is what we've done for the last 20 years. Well, that's why we're here, because we're working on a 20-year-old plan, and there's no sign that they get that. Instead, it's just filled with bland, blank corporate jargon, as you say. It's all just empty platitudes that we're expected to swallow. We've heard it too many times now, but
it's to say, and I'm having a laugh. We'll touch on the Barrowfield stuff and what we think that might have implications in terms of those financials there. But I can't help but laugh, right? Because it's absolutely brilliant. Now, look at this. There's another from the words of Nicholson. His one's brilliant, by the way. It's full of garbage, right? During the year, we also made progress with our digital strategy as we look to enhance engagement and communication with our supporters. The implementation of our digital strategy will lead and improve touch points of which our supporters, including the launch of a new app. Whoop-de-doo, get it bunting out. A digital ticketing options and redevelopment of Celtic TV. Come on. We understand that the global supporter base wants to engage with Celtic, and we aim to provide them with the opportunity to benefit from a more seamless experience. Mate, James, why are we moaning? They're increasing their communication. No, I'm not saying that a supporter who is in another country or far away are less valuable than you or I that are closer to home and go to games and stuff. But is it not convenient that they really want to do the best for the ones who are really far away? Or we've increased your potential to give us money to watch us. But, because I understand if you live in a far-flung part of the world and you crave to get your Celtic fix, you want the best you possibly can. So, yes, that is maybe a good thing that the club are doing for them. But it's just lip service because, their supporters clubs out in America and that are peed off by the product they're getting in the park. They're going to be, they're literally in a position where, by and large, they're just going to have to eat it with what they've got. What about the communication to the people on the ground, the season ticket holders? Is that not where they should really be focusing their attention?
Well, I mean, the club always seems to want to communicate with us when it's trying to sell us something. Mm-hmm. And I mean, what he's talking about in terms of the digital media performance, maybe he's talking about Celtic TV. I don't know. Celtic TV got a nice upgrade this year, and it looks really good. My good lady's in Poland, and she loves it. She's got a subscription, and she thinks it's excellent. But as you say, in terms of actual, honest to God, on the ground communication, mate, the fans that go every week and all that, there's none of that. It's ludicrous. And I mean, I've been keeping a running score on how long it's been since Michael Nicholson was appointed CEO without getting a major interview. Right, 1,366 days and counting. There's no other industry where that would fly at all. It shouldn't even fly in football. I mean, we slag the club across the city for everything that they do and everything they don't do. But they communicate with the fans very regularly. And the idea that a CEO or there would ever go 1,366 days without doing a major interview is just unbelievable. And this guy's got away with that. And part of the problem is the media's let him away with it as well. They should never let him away with that. They should have been hounding him for the first day that he got that job on a permanent basis and asked him the questions that we're now all asking is, where's the plan? Where's the strategy? Where's the long-term vision that you keep on talking about, but you never articulate? And the only reason he's getting away with this is because he's been allowed to get away with it. His own board of directors allowed him to get away with it. The fans, to a certain extent, have allowed him to get away with it, but we'll know anymore. And the mainstream media has just been an absolute joke in holding this guy to account. There's not even been the slightest effort to do it.
Nothing.
It treats them with contempt as well. That's what's amazing about it. There must have been requests when he got the gig. There must have been people who, like BBC, must have reached out and said to him, "We'd like to speak to you." Whatever, and he's not even acknowledged that. So it's mental. It's absolutely mental.
You touched on our neighbours across the city. Now, folk don't like me bring up, but I think we spoke about it. We're obviously in the part of the fan consultation chat, right? It was brought up earlier on, and I mentioned it, and we all learned that they're unhappy. It's kind of funny because this is maybe the first time in a long time that there's been sort of discontent in Glasgow on both sides. Various different things. Theirs is solely based on the football, full stop. And I was watching the Axon boys earlier on. They made a great point where it says that the chat was around about Rangers are getting angry because they want to compete domestically. We are getting angry because we want more than that, which isn't a bad place to be in, but it doesn't change what's put right in front of us. But when we speak about Rangers, right, they had that one-to-one with the fan group. Their CEO, their men sat down. They took the time. I mean, can you imagine them wanting to sit down with any fan group, let alone us be upstarts that have, put together the fan movement and having a chat and actually want to listen face to face and take on. Now, it might just be for lip service and they just walk away and go, very good. But it's about how it looks on the surface. It's trying to engage. It's trying to do the right things. They're director of football or whatever title he's got, he comes out, he gives their vision about what they want to do moving forward. He tells them it's transparent. You then look at what they're trying to do at the club across the board. We laugh, we scoff, but Edmiston House, they go and do that. They turn into a match day hub, entertainment hub, venue that can be hired, museum, ironic, I know. But the thing is, they do these things and they're meant to be skint. The stadium, improvements, steel issues aside, they go and do it, but they're skint. Player investment on the squad, nearly 27, 28 million pounds, but they're skint. Now, one thing that I'm not saying they are the blueprint, far from it. They are a shambles. But the one thing you can never criticise the people that are in there running the club is that they at least try to be seen to be doing the right things. And maybe the go-ahead Eagles guy was right. Maybe there's aspects of them that we could take a leaf out their book. The only difference is we can do it with the money behind us and not for fear.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing that they've done consistently over the last few years, and it hasn't turned out well, and I grant you it hasn't turned out well, is that they've trusted their managers. The guy who's in that chair gets his budget and gets told that he can spend it however he wants. That's how they can go and sign a guy like Antman without any difficulty for the same club who we managed to piss off to the extent that their chairman slagged us in the media. Because our manager isn't trusted by the club to use his own judgment, although he gets paid $2 million a year for it. Yeah. For exercising the judgment. He doesn't get trusted to make a judgment like that. If he comes back and says the guy's worth $4 or $5 million and Celtic's wee data sheet says he's only worth 2.5, then they'll go with the data and the manager can get buggered. It's ludicrous. It's a mad situation. And here's the thing, right? I defended the club's lack of infrastructure spending a few years ago, right? Just on the hard numbers. Because if you build a hotel, you need, even if you fill it every single night of the year, it still costs a fortune to run. The margins are tiny, and it doesn't pay for itself for 20 years, 30 years. Mm-hmm. So on the basis of that, you're wondering, is it worth spending the money? The museum, even more so, because you wonder who will ever go to it more than once or twice. Now, that said, by the way, right, my good lady is out here all the time, and the last twice she's been out here, she's done the Celtic Park tour, like the last twice.
Yep.
And she'll do the Celtic Park tour a third time and a fourth time and a fifth time. And I'm sure she will. And that's the kind of person that the museum will attract again and again and again. I would never get tired of walking in and out of the Celtic Museum. Right. But the problem is that there's too many people on our board who see everything as being about a bottom line. Mm-hmm. You don't sign a player for £11 million if you can't sell them for more than £11 million at some future stage. So you got a guy like Arnie Engels who's branded a failure because people on the board don't look at what he produces on the pitch, but think to themselves, how are we ever going to make the money back on this guy? Right? And it's the same logic that goes into lack of infrastructure spending. It's all about the bottom line. It's all about how long will it take us to, that won't pay for itself for 50 years. But at some point, is that really what it's about? Our club should have a museum. There should be a Celtic museum. That's a cultural thing. That's got nothing to do with how much money it makes. If that thing made a loss every single year, it would still be worth having because it celebrates the club's history and the club's culture. It's mad. It's mad. And they've done that before us.
And you think of the amount of stuff, the amount of artifacts and that are buried, that we know factually are buried deep inside the stadium. They're in storage in various places that could be coming out. Now, again, as you rightfully say, just coming back to it, the chat about the hotel and the museum and the experience and using the footprint of the stadium to improve, it sounded brilliant, and then it quickly died a death. Now, again, another thing that I've said before when I was on here with Kev, Graham and Paddy, we looked at the board and we were talking about these things, and you says, yes, they always look at it as being a base level. Now, the last time they gave us some information was when we spoke about, we were all looking for the redevelopment of the stadium. And the key word in there was it is unfeasible or not going to happen whilst we are still within the SPFL. Okay, fair. Now, I understand, and I think a lot of people maybe do. I'm more realistic to this one. I would rather see improvements of the current setup of Celtic Park, the current makeup, how it's laid out. Can we improve that? The likes of, can we put a facade around the side, extending out, knocking through walls, extending out the concourses, all that kind of stuff, improving the seating quality, so on and so forth. I personally don't see the merit in the medium term spending. Let's be honest, it's going to be tens, even maybe into hundreds of millions to go and do something like that. It is. It's going to be extortionate, right? Would it fill out? Yes, it would. Would it pay itself eventually? But I can understand why not do that. But there's no reason why they can't improve what is already there. That can, update it, upgrade it, improve it. That goes without saying. The likes of the hotel, the likes of the museum, as you say, these aren't going to cost you the earth to do. No. Now, as I said again, Wouldn't it be good if we knew somebody that had was at arm's reach that had something to do with hotels and stuff? You know, it was Chris Traynor, we says 11.5% investor of Forest Media that he sold for over 30 million, tied into Forest Hotels. Guess what they done? They were responsible for having the Radisson Red being the first ground up Radisson in Europe for God knows how long. Pitched at pitching point. Here's what we want. We'll build it. You'll buy it. You'll take it on. We'll make a profit. Happy days. Guess what happened? Now, wouldn't it? Are you trying to tell me if you really wanted that hotel to happen that you couldn't have somebody like that with that background, that experience to come in and get somebody to do it for you? To do it for you, because it's very possible. And as for the museum and as for the venue, they've got the sports bar. I'm sure it ticks over a wee bit, but it's pokey. Now, if you go into that Edmiston House, is it great? No, it isn't, but it's still a decent size venue, and they have probably paid their way with that. It's short-term thinking, James.
It's absolutely. Do you know what it is? It's the attitude that permeates the whole way the club is run. They know the cost of everything, but the value in none.
Yeah, great way of putting it.
They will calculate how much it will cost us to build a museum, and they will never, ever think about that thing will still be there in 30, 40 years, and people will be able to go and celebrate Celtic's entire history just by walking around a building. There is a value to that is not measured in how much money it makes.
Mm-hmm.
It's mental.
I mean, see, even we're talking about basic upgrading. See the fact that we've still got a gazebo outside for a press conferences. Right? I mean, come on, that in itself is an absolute joke. But
talk about a world-class operation, and the European media has to see that every time they come to Celtic Park. We bring a Real Madrid to your stadium, and the Spanish media's got to sit in a tent. It's preposterous. It really is.
Yeah,
they're kidding themselves on this lot. They are absolutely kidding themselves on.
Well, back to the statements before we move on a wee bit. This is another to wrap up again from the wise words dated 19th September by Michael Nicholson, Chief Executive, reflecting on an incredibly busy year. I'd like to thank all my colleagues who worked tirelessly for the best for Celtic as we look to the season ahead. Together with optimism, we have started off the domestic season well. We must and will strive not only for success, but to continuously improve our club, both on and off the pitch. That's a great sign-off, isn't it? That sounds like a guy that's learned all his lessons for the failings of the Champions League, learned for the failings of the transfer window, and we're going to get this nice new rejuvenated Michael Nicholson come January. It's just going to be spending money, isn't it?
Yeah. It's another trick that they're always pulling on, is this jam tomorrow idea. Was it Lowell who said a year ago, 2 years ago, that they realised the inefficiency of having all that money in the bank that we can't spend, whereas we just keep making profits every single year? Of course, it's inefficient. To give the taxman more than we've ever spent on a player, it's
ridiculous.
It's disgusting, and that's the kind of thing that they're defending. I mean, by the way, Log's statement also boasts about a £77 million transfer spend in the last 3 years. So I like that. I thought that was rather interesting. I wanted to see what the flip side of that was. And the flip side, of course, is that we've made 115 million in sales in the same period. And I'll say again what I've said repeatedly elsewhere. Whatever Brendan Rodgers' first-year transfer budget was, he did not spend penny one of it. Whatever his budget in year 2 was, he didn't spend any of that. And whatever his budget for this season was, he's not spent a penny of that either. Every single penny that we've spent in transfer fees is money that we had already brought in from player sales, and we are 40-some million in profit from that alone in the last 3 seasons. What the hell am I doing? I think your mic's off, mate.
Sorry, my bad. I says, and just to jump into that, when you read it and you have a wee look at, so that's the service you provide, James. When you look at some of the things that they say, when you dig into these statements, right, there's a kind of false apology without actually explaining why they're wrong, right? But there's also a lot of blowing smoke up their arse, as the saying goes. And they come back on what you said about the player registrations for Mr. Wall. He says, First team labour costs were the highest levels in the club history. Cool, no worries. About time. The total, including committed agent fees, 42.6 million was invested in player acquisitions during the year, more than doubling the prior year spend, making the highest single season investment in the club history, which twice broke the club transfer record. As a result, the carrying value of the squad is the highest it's ever been in the history of the club. And over the past 30 years, in June 2025, total investment in player registrations had been £77.5 million. Well done. You broke the record twice, and we've got this really expensive team. I'll ask you the question, James. Is this the best team that we've then seen at Celtic, but it costs them so much?
Well, I mean, this is the point again. You know what I mean? And a great big chunk of the money that we've spent in the last 3 years was spent in the first summer transfer window. Well, almost every penny of it was a complete waste. And we've spent a chunk of money on a handful of players this summer who will struggle ever to play in the first team.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? They want to talk about, costs gone up and the highest wage bill ever. Well, maybe the wage bill wouldn't have been quite so high had we not been saddled with so many Mark Log signings that we couldn't get off the books. Mm-hmm. And now we've dumped another bunch of them on Brendan, who he's got no use for.
Or signed them early. Not waited to the end. Not waited to be chucked another £3.5 million on their fees. All these things go and help you out, don't they?
Yeah, of course. It's bonkers. The way we do things just doesn't make any sense. Nothing about it makes any sense. I mean, they're even apologising for the timing of the transfers, right? Which some of us have only been moaning about for like 10 years. This mad day hangs on the last day. It's obviously insane, right? And they're actually acknowledging now that might be an issue. But what are the odds that we do the exact same in January and the exact same again next summer?
So for the balance, I always like to bring in varying opinions. I've got one I just want to pitch to you, as it says, but we like everybody's opinions here. I think the vast majority of people are feeling us here, but GEL says the board do invest. It's not their fault that Rodgers has no idea what a good player looks like. But what's your thoughts on GEL's comments there? Are you in any level of agreement with that?
It's one of the biggest fallacies, and when you talk about Rodgers, it's one of the biggest fallacies there is, that Rodgers can't spot a good player. If Rodgers can't spot a good player, then we had no business hiring Rodgers in the first place, either time. Liverpool had no business hiring Rodgers in the first place. Leicester had no business hiring Rodgers in the first place. What happened to Rodgers at Leicester is often used as a big stick to beat Rodgers with. But the exact same thing happened to Rodgers at Leicester in his final season has happened to him this season, at the start of this season, where the team was weakened to the extent that Rodgers could see it was going to cause problems. And he told the board exactly what those problems would be and where those problems would arise. And they either didn't listen to him or they couldn't spend the money that he obviously thought they had to spend. And, Rodgers, I'll tell you what great managers do, really great managers. Great managers are architects. And I've written about this quite a lot. I don't know if you've ever built a PC. Building a PC is a really excellent thing to do, right? Now, I've no technical skill and I can't actually physically construct it, right? But I buy a new one every 3 years and I go on one of the websites where you design it yourself and you pick every single component. And you have to get every single component right and you have to know what you're doing, because if you skimp on any area of it, it's not going to do what you want it to do. So if you buy a really high-end graphics card, that's useless unless you've got RAM that can run it, unless you've got a monitor that can display it, then it's basically a waste of money. And that's what great managers do. They build things from the ground up and they pick every single individual part. And every individual part goes in a specific place to do a specific job. Ange was the best example I think I have seen in many, many, many years, because that's why hardly any of his signings were failures. Hardly any of them. Because he would not sign a player unless he knew what specific role that player was going to play in the team. It's the exact opposite of what the board did to Rodgers in that summer when they dumped like 11 players on him. And he didn't have any use for any of them because none of them fitted into his grand plan. But that's what great managers do. Rodgers knew what Nicholson was going to do. That's why he agreed to sign Nicholson. He spotted something in Adamida for that 6-month spell where we had him on loan, where he knew that he could fit into his system and play the way he wanted him to play. That's why Ida's nearly 50 goals in a Celtic shirt was better than he ever did in an Norwich shirt, and might end up better than he ever does in a Swansea shirt. Because a good manager knows if a player's got the attributes to fit into his style and his system. Right? This nonsense about Rodgers can't spot a player. It's not even about spotting a player. It's knowing where a specific player fits in a specific role in your team. And the people that are complaining about Rodgers leaving X amount of talent on the bench and this is another one. Charlie Mulgrew was talking this rubbish again today. He left £29 million worth of talent on the bench. Have a look around every top-class club in Europe. There's a hell of a lot more than that sitting on benches everywhere. You used to call that strength and depth. I don't know why it's such a problem when Rodgers does it. But it's absolute rubbish. You have to make allowances, right, for how many of the players in Rodgers' first season Rodgers actually picked, because he didn't pick very many of them, if any. The two Rodgers signings that we know are absolutely his were the January transfer window signings, Ida and Kuhn, and they were both successful in the context of getting us out of the line, winning as a double. The Champions League run last season was built largely on the back of having Arnie Engels in midfield and Austin Trusty at centre back. And if they guys only playing every week just now, wait until the Europa League campaign. Those guys probably will play nearly every game.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. The manager, I've criticised the manager, and rightly so, for how he uses the tools that he's got, but I don't necessarily think that the hit rate of players that he's brought in have been particularly disastrous. And as you say, we keep on hearing this about club signings versus him. Now, there's a few things that I want to sort of quickly railroad through before we go off. Come back to statements about this on and off the field. That gets us on to the Barrowfield. We get the long overdue Barrowfield redevelopment. We've got a wee video where we get shown around it. Now, the financials of that haven't really been taken into account. Now, when we look at it, we didn't really increase much money in the bank. There was the chat about the 100 million, as we discussed before we won. I always felt that seemed a bit sort of fanciful, a bit sort of fantasy land. There's no doubt with the other sales that we've got, and we maybe are going to be around maybe putting our 10 million or something on top of it, because there's running costs, and as soon as that's printed, that was back for January, you're starting at your overheads and you're running, you're eating that down as much as you're bringing in. So they're probably all around about an even keel. But the general chit-chat was maybe that Barrowfield was in around 20 million. Now, I don't know about you, what did you think of the video, and what do you think of this as a generalised development? Now, I think that, is it a good thing? Yeah, of course it is. You want to have the best in sort of facilities for all your teams if you want to try and be in line with elite clubs and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's as impressive as it's been cracked out to be. See, looking at the video, it's porta cabins and a big tent. That's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah, there's a lot about it that worries me. It was supposed to be a much grander project than it turned out to be. And then they did what they always do, and they started making cuts to what they were intending to build. And so something that seemed like it was really ambitious at start, they were going to build a grandstand and stuff, so fans could go and watch the women's team rather than as renting out somebody else's stadium to do it. All got scaled back. And I worry that attitude prevailed in a lot of the design decisions that they made. Because if you look at those port cabins, as you say, they look very small. I don't know that we can fit everybody in those dressing rooms, but there are some worrying elements to it. The length of time it took for a start, I don't know what the hell.
We were only getting updates via that.
Maybe it was one set of keys and nobody could find them. I don't know. But you're right, there are elements to it that look really cheap, and it doesn't look very well done. Again, this could be splitting hairs, but even if it isn't splitting hairs, I wrote about it the night, and I was talking about it in the context of the Millennium Dome. And it was Jacques Chirac who, when he went to it, basically asked the only pertinent question, where he said, well, what is this for? And nobody could answer the question, because other than being a New Labour vanity project, nobody seemed to know what the purpose of it was. And if we don't have good coaches, and we don't have a good structure, a good youth academy structure, then that's nothing but a white elephant. That's a lot of money spent for a tent and some porta cabins, as you say.
I mean, the thing is, I'm looking at it and I agree. I can see that some people are not really fussed about it, but as in line with what we're talking about, they're saying about off the field investment, and certainly that's something to be done now. I think that any sort of big club quotes should have suitable facilities for all levels and
Yeah,
all,
absolutely.
female side, men's team, boys club, so on and so forth, all the way down. If you join a club at Celtic, you should be getting the red carpet or the green carpet wheeled out, so to speak, and you should be treated like you are part of Celtic. You shouldn't be getting fired in the park and run a bit embarrassing, right? But as you say, it does feel a wee bit like something of a looky, the new shiny, look at this, distract your eyes.
A wee
And
bit.
the execution for me is a wee bit poor. I think that my vision for Barrowfield would be, I always says, why don't they have somewhere like you would have up at Peters Hill, where it was like a kind of wee sort of stand, and you could have your the female games down there. There was facilities, the likes of the bar or whatever, but you could go on, you're on a season ticket, and you could get down and you could get in. Basically, first come, first serve, and you could go and watch the female teams, you could watch the under teams playing in this wee self-contained pitch where one stand on it or two stands on it, and then everything off the back of it, the training pitches, the facilities. It looks like a couple of nice outdoor pitches and a nice big indoor one with a couple of porta cabins on it. And now what I found interesting with the video was there was a wee bit of picture, I shared it again in the chat group, and it was this that made me laugh. And it says, main purpose, play Champions League football, create a world-class learning environment. And they never showed you this. So I don't know what it says. It says, philosophy, the person developed the player, right? We never got, I want to see an actual picture of that in full to see what other buzzwords are fired on there. It's up there with world-class basics, right? Yeah. But main purpose, play Champions League football. Somebody should have told them that when it came to the sort of the first team squad, eh?
Probably not a great idea to advertise that as part of the vision at this particular moment in time. Yeah. But if you're going to talk about world class, then actually build a world class facility. And I know and I read some of what was getting said about it by Law and Nicholson. And they talked about how we had the chance to move and build a purpose-built facility somewhere else. But traditionally, we've said, do you know what? Again, you're anchoring your thinking in the past then again, right? Maybe we should have went and built a purpose-built facility somewhere else. Maybe we should have went and done the whole thing properly and spent proper money on it. We have enough of it sitting in the bank. We gave 12 million to the tax man. Maybe we should have spent some money and got it absolutely up to the right standard. Should have built a world-class facility if we're going to boast about
do you think that's obviously they would have owned the land, which is the key point here, isn't it? I mean, how much could they have sold that land for? Maybe it remains to be seen, but it's the think themselves, well, how much would it cost us to get another site somewhere else? I don't know. They're thinking buying it. Do you think the idea just, but it's Barrowfield and the history and it's steeped in it? It's all, excuse the language, it's bleary-eyed pish and birthday card pish.
I suspect it's a combination of that and them just being cheap, and they just didn't want to go and build a purpose-built facility somewhere else. Probably was going to prove to be a more expensive project, and they just went, nah, sorry. Mm-hmm. We'll try and fit it onto the Barrowfield footprint.
Well, they've also then doubled down on the Barrowfield thing, with saying, look at what we've done here, and we're going to do improvements at Lennoxtown as well. I think that Lennoxtown thing is long overdue. Now, we often slagged off, I don't know what it's called these days, Murray Park or whatever its name is these days, about how that it was just an expensive, stupid vanity project that yielded nothing. Lennoxtown feels a wee bit like that as well. It feels like it's a wee bit back in the sort of dark days. And you speak to ex-players and you hear it, and there's a lot of people that have basically says, it's the exact same as when they were first there, and the same with the stadium. You know, you think of guys like Fergus McCann that walking through those gates, and you think he must look around and go, "Oh, what's changed in here? Maybe changed the carpet or something like that." Celtic need to be moving on into it.
You know what concerns me about it as much as anything. I can't help but think, right, that I mean, I used a couple of examples in the article I wrote about this today. And the guy I kept thinking about most was Boris Johnson. And some of his London vanity projects, which were just ridiculous. Like I can't remember off the top of my head what the name is, but the snake sculpture thing.
Right.
Which one of the national newspapers described as spaghetti in the sky. And it was so useless that they actually turned it into a slide. to try and attract tourists to go and see it. I mean, it's ludicrous waste of money. And the famous bridge across the Thames, the one they were going to have gardens and all that one, they spent £40 million on the feasibility study for that, just to realise that it wasn't feasible. I mean, it's mental, right? And what I think happened here at some point was a lot of drew attention to the fact that Fergus came and built a whole club. Fergus built a stadium, he rebuilt the finances, he established the season ticket base, then he left, and his last bequest to the Celtic fans was to give the money towards the training ground and all that. And I think these guys at some point thought, well, we've never actually done anything. We've no left a lasting legacy behind. And that as much as anything else, this is a legacy project, which makes it a vanity project.
Yeah.
Which means they didn't even bother to think about whether it was going to have any utility. They just wanted something they could put Peter Law's name on at some future point. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, it does. It feels a bit sort of like smoke and mirrors. It seems distractionary to the real case in point here. We've went off, covered a good bit of ground there. I think, how do you think this will be received? Obviously, we're quite early in coming out and talking about this, and as you rightly says, every other fan media platform's going to be out there, every other blog. There's a lot of guys, financials, that are very good that do pieces on that. I'll be digging deep into that. How do you think this is going to be generally received? Now, we've given our thoughts on it here, but what do you think the sort of general how this is going to be received? Well, give us it for two ends, for the fan side, but also from the mainstream media, because we know that they like to paint things up, and it could be what he's all moaning about. And it's a big stick, isn't it? The financials of Celtic and the dominance domestically have been this huge stick that everybody's loved to scoff at people like ourselves, call us entitled, call us out of order, call us upstarts and everything else. How do you think it's going to be received on both sides?
Well, I'll do fan media first. The fan media headline is that we've gave HMRC more money this year than we've ever spent on a player. And we should be beating them with it. We should be beating this club with that stick until you can hear them scream. And really, to me, that is an absolutely atrocious state. And it's an absolutely atrocious fact that jumps out here. The mainstream media, I'm going to say something that might sound very paranoid. But it's the mainstream media, in effect, that pushed this idea that there might be as much as 100 million sitting in the bank at the end of this. And I suspect that one of the lines that the mainstream media is going to take is Celtic fans should cease their complaining because there isn't as much money as they thought there would be.
Yeah. So it's almost like a get out of jail free. Like, the fans are overreacting. What do you expect? What do you expect? Okay, that's why they're not spending the money, because but then you can't avoid nearly £80 million sitting there, can you? As we say, that's not including for the extra people to come in. But I am fully on board with what you say. I think that's a message that should be spread far and wide. The fact that we give more money away than we spend on, as he says, and twice we broke our transfer record. Well, we're breaking records of giving money away to the HMRC, aren't we?
We certainly are. As I said, not that I'm complaining about it, because nurses, doctors, cops, and infrastructure and all the things that we need as a country, I have no objection to the fact that our club takes its social responsibilities seriously. But it is a piss take all the same. It's a piss take. We've been knocked out of Champions League, and there are holes all over the team that we are sending money down to London that we don't have to send down there. It's crazy. Somebody said to me a few years ago, ask me, are we a football team that runs a business, or are we a business that runs a football team? And it's increasingly apparent that we are a business that happens to operate a football team.
Yeah, definitely. And just to finish up, there's a few folk that are asking things. You mentioned it briefly there as well. We spoke about narrative, we spoke about spin. It seems quite funny because there was the two things that came out. Well, I say two things that have come out. There's been one constant. It's been an ex-player, and it's been the Charlie Mulgrew Celtic PR train of everything's good. He's been coming out and doing whatever he's been doing. And then we've also heard the former, shall we say, Celtic insider, that piece is broken out. So, I mean, what is it? Is this just how things are going to work? And something like this here will just be used to pad out and push that narrative a wee bit more for these type of folk?
It's Wally Hockey made two different statements on two different days, if I'm getting it right. Either that or he made two contradictory statements to the same outlet, and the interview's been split in two and been covered in 2 different days. But on one day, he seems to be saying that we should basically give these guys a break, and on the other hand, he's saying, but the fans can't be messed about. And you can't have the fans being disrespected. And he's right about that. He's absolutely right about that. But again, a lot of what he says is anchored in, look what these guys have done up until now. Well, there's some of us who are going to say, well, what they've done up until now is 7 Champions League qualification exits in 11 years and 5 of them in a row, because they don't learn lessons and they don't do business in a proper fashion, in a timely fashion, and they don't back their managers properly. That's what some of us will say about the history and the fact that we've been made to look much better run and much better organised than we are by having no real domestic competition worth a damn. And the only place we're getting judged is in Europe, and the verdict is harsh. And then on the other hand, you've got Charlie Mulgrew, who's taken a much more robust attitude towards the fans and as good as calling us spoiled brats. And Wally Hockey is speaking as a guy who loves the club and who as a world-class businessman recognises that there is a business case for a lot of what the club is doing that maybe fans don't recognise. To a certain extent, it's a little bit patronising, but I do understand where he's coming from, and I understand what his motivation is. When he talks about how much the fans love the club, there's at least an understanding that the fans are pissed off and maybe a right to be pissed off about certain things. Charlie Mulgrew's is just a contemptuous attitude for a guy who I think is acting more out of self-interest than any Celtic-related interest.
Yeah.
Because he was interviewed for a job at the club not that long ago, for which he was majorly underqualified. And I don't know how he ever got the interview, except that he clearly has friends inside Celtic, as so many people who've ended up working inside Celtic do.
Yeah.
And I think I think he realises that we're about to have a major managerial change in the summer if everything continues on the present road, and that maybe he'll be part of that managerial dream team that we unveil. It's so transparent that he's towing the party line. But again, both of them have missed the point, because both of them seem to think that this is to a certain extent is about a kind of ingratitude and about a misunderstanding of how things work, and that it's a response to what's happened this summer. And the two of them have completely overlooked the fact that this is much bigger and much deeper, and there are so many different issues that so many different fan groups have had over the years, and that this summer has brought them all to a head.
Yeah,
and got all is in the same room where we can all talk about the things that bother us, and we realise that, in fact, if it wasn't for the complete lack of domestic opposition, it might be a lot clearer that the people who run our club have been coasting for a long time without a plan. And now that we can all sit in the room and discuss all the different things that bothered us early years, it's evident that the club is failing in a lot of different areas.
I mean, you made an excellent point there that I think gets glossed over, where you were talking about the sort of success and how it was against a backdrop. Again, listen, we're not going to take away from the achievements.
No,
you've got to win those
I've celebrated every single one of them. And
absolutely. But it is a good point and something worth considering. Now, let's just say Rangers didn't go out of business, right? As bad as that would be, let's just think about it. And let's just say that they weren't cheating the tax man and all that kind of stuff. Let's just imagine a world where there was a consistently legitimate challenging Rangers like there were pre-death, right? What do you honestly think? Where would Celtic be if that was what we had over the past 20 odd years?
It's funny that people should talk about 20-year time frames, right? It's funny that Law himself should talk about a 20-year time frame in his statement, right? Because if you look at the 20-year time frame, then you have to split it into two. You have to split it into before 2012 and after 2012. And the simple fact is that before 2012, they won the last 3 titles, right? They won the last 3. And Law survived that, when that should never have been allowed. Law should have went after the first one, the Willow Flood one day, because that was his fault. And I remember the day that John McGinn signed for Villa, and we'd been knocked out, or we were on the brink of getting knocked out of the Champions League, because the night before we played AEK Athens. And myself and Alted were at Celtic Park to meet Law on Resolution 12. And the manager got briefed against the night before. Again, talk about familiarity. And every single word that Law said that night sounded very, very much like what Chris McLaughlin had said a Celtic director said to him the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I said to Law that day is, if this goes tits up, look on the bright side. You'll never have to hear the name Stephen Fletcher again. Right? And he always said that would be the name etched on his tombstone. And it's and you know what? That should have been the final word to Peter Law at Celtic.
Yeah.
That transfer window should have got him sacked.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they went on and won another 2 titles right after it shows you what our past would have been had they not went out of business in 2012. We'd have been trading titles with them all the way through this spell. And wouldn't have been any big, great run of Celtic, untrammeled Celtic success. We'd have continued to do what we were doing then. We'd have been swapping titles with them and going 2 in a row, and then they would have won 3 in a row, and then we would have won 1, and then they would have won 2, and it would have been just like that.
And you know, that's the one kind of thing that frustrates me right now. See, as much as I love, as much as any fan on dining out on their sort of, their failures, their untimely death, as you could call it, and their struggles over the years, I love lording it over them. I love absolutely the days. And I mean, it seems long gone are the times when the hammers and the beatings, it's been a long time since we've had that, right? But I've like every fan, celebrated every single one, and I've laughed at every single one of their shortcomings, right? But there's also a wee part of me that asks a question. As much as I really don't want to see Rangers do well and be genuinely competing, at the same time I think to myself, is that the thing that would actually change this situation? Because clearly just getting beat off them embarrassed. I look back at last season, the head-to-head with Shambolic, right? I think that you look at that, you should be embarrassed. I just thought that might be the catalyst where they go, bit too close for comfort there. If they start winning games, they can beat us. Let's sort it out. Clearly that wasn't enough. No. When they won their 55th title, I thought, here we go. We didn't really react. We just managed to land on our feet. We didn't even tool up for that. It just happened that we were so lucky with that. And I always say that's a level of luck that we have had. Now, we've had to do the hard work and win the games. I'll never take away from that. But there's always been an undertone, an undercurrent of failings. Everybody else going tits up and falling apart. And that doesn't keep on going forever. So I'm quite interested to think. I wonder what it would be like if things got together. And again, we look at that manager across the city that's getting slagged off and they're finding a hard time with. See if he does get bulleted and it is anytime soon. I genuinely believe that if they bring in a manager with half a brain, that they've got a decent enough squad to start making it a bit sort of tight. But will that push us on? Will we see any level of improvement in January? Because you made a point there, and I said that a million times in this channel. See the failings of the CEO. You talked about Law, and it should have been the nail in the coffin. Bear in mind the amount of qualification failures that he's oversaw, and then we talk about Law, Nicholson there. As I said, see if you were the CEO of any other business or company, and decisions that you made or were a major part of making cost your business a minimum £30 million, you'd be fired on the spot.
Yeah, of course you would be. I did an article on the 7 Champions League qualification knockouts. And I started that one with the first modern day one that we're counting. But I had to caveat it because we had the season before was Lennon's one where he turned around the Shakhtar Karagandhi result.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And James Forrest got the last minute winner at Celtic Park to send us through. But we came within a ball hair of that one being on the list. And then fast forward a few years and Brendan's first one, where we needed a last minute Dembele penalty at Celtic Park to beat Astana. And that almost ended up on the list and all. So that list could be a lot worse than it actually is. Because the board left us underprepared for both of those games and all, for both of those rounds. In fact, the Neil Lennon one is even worse than probably any modern one has been. Because that year, that came off the back of the Barcelona season when Lennon performed the miracle. And it wasn't just beating Barcelona either, because we came, I think, within a minute of getting the result in Nou Camp as well. Mm-hmm. And they scored some freakish last-minute goal to win that game. And Lennon's achievement that year was absolutely extraordinary. And the way they rewarded Lennon was to sell a key player before every subsequent Champions League round.
Yeah.
Which I still cannot wrap my brain around. But that's how Lennon got rewarded for that. And Lennon got us through anyway against Shakhtar and left at the end of the season, probably realising that it was all over and that there was no way that he could possibly go into another summer and be treated like that. I did not blame him one bit. And the whole thing is mad. And the way we responded to that was that we hired the guy who we had originally brought in to be his assistant manager.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go to the period where we were just talking about the summer, 4 seasons ago, when we waited around for a whole summer for Eddie Howe, and then did he get him, and then made a last second decision to appoint Ange. Right? There are a lot of people who focus on outcomes rather than process, right? And shit.
No,
and that continues to haunt us, the fact that too many people focus on outcome rather than process. The Lennon appointment the first time turned out to be a stroke of luck because Lennon did better than a lot of people expected.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
The Ronnie Deila appointment was a complete accident. But for Ronnie, we wouldn't have laid the foundations that Brendan built on with all the health and all the changes to the fitness and all that, and like modernising the thinking at the club in that regard.
Yeah.
And we would never Tierney because Tierney was like a third choice left back in the reserve team. Mm-hmm. When Ronnie spotted that he was a top talent, Callum McGregor had been on loan at Notts County and was coming back to then promptly be sold. And Deila said, "We're not selling him. He's going to be a first team player." And again, we were lucky there. Then we Ange. Like, so there's too much focus on outcome rather than process. And the process at Celtic Park for over a decade has been an absolute shambles. An absolute shambles. As I've said to a few people, the analogy I like to use is if somebody in your household mortgaged the house and didn't tell you, right, and mortgaged every single one of your possessions, took it to Vegas, bet on red, and came back with double their money, you wouldn't thank that person for that. You would change the locks and boot them all other place. Not even having took a chance like that. And if you focus on outcome rather than process, that's the kind of thing that happens.
It's fairly accurate. That is the thing. Celtic they've been a lot of how we say it, happy accidents that have happened. And I've always said as well, and also aided and abetted by non-competition elsewhere or unsustained competition from elsewhere. But yes, so to finish up, we've went nearly around 15. Time flies when you're having a right good gripe at this board, doesn't it? But yes, based on the back of that statement, we know what will be interesting. It'll start to kick up. It's going to rub up some folk as it has ourselves the wrong way. Sure. And it's certainly not going to help the sort of cause against, because it is against the fan movement there. Interesting, because this piece is broken out. Now, this piece broken out to me would suggest, as we all said, that somebody was going to go. You read the statements there for Nicholson, you read the statement from Wall, and it doesn't sound like two guys that are ready to go. There's been a lot of swirling that Wall might well bow out. Is that what peace is to you? Does that? Because let's be honest, that's the guy that you and anybody could see is the one that needs to go. Is there going to be any? Do you expect any level of change at board level anytime soon?
I'm slightly ahead of the fan movement on this. I'm slightly ahead in terms of how I've been looking at this whole summer. We've all arrived at the same conclusion at the same point, right? But a lot of us, but some of us have been on the journey a wee bit longer. And my own personal feelings about the summer was that there was a point in the summer where it became obvious that Rodgers was getting deliberately frustrated, where there were people on the board who were actually putting obstacles in the guy's way. Mm-hmm. And for that point on, I said to a few people, and I wrote it a couple of times and all, that everything's, as far as I'm concerned, everything's changed this summer. This is a breaking point. And it should be a breaking point for a lot of people. When you have senior executives at the club who are, for whatever reason, and I'm sure that they can dress it up as Rodgers doesn't intend to stay, and maybe they think Rodgers is the right guy, or maybe they believe that Rodgers has wasted the resources that he's had, or whatever excuses they tell themselves, right? They took a conscious decision not to back the manager and to deliberately weaken the team.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a point of no return. And when you take a decision like that and you're a senior executive of any organisation, you're finished. And so as far as I was concerned, for many weeks ago, there were people who, as far as I was concerned, were done and had no more legitimacy and no more right to sit on the board. And I don't think that we can rest until the senior executive is gone. And that means the chairman, it means the CEO, it means the finance officer. And if they want to take a couple of non-executive directors with them, it won't be about time.
Feel free.
And the thing is that the people who have been saying that we should focus on Desmond and you have to be realistic about what you try and do.
Mm-hmm.
I think every single one of those guys that sits on the board right now is vulnerable to one degree or another. To a well-organised fan media campaign, I think all of them have got vulnerabilities. Nicholson's vulnerable because Nicholson is now 1,366 days without giving a major interview. Mm-hmm. And that means that either Nicholson doesn't know how to present the plan, or that Nicholson is just a glove puppet and nobody trusts him to get up there and articulate the plan without orders from daddy or whatever it is. Right? And either way, you don't want a guy like that as your CEO. Nicholson looks to me an awful lot like an empty shot. He's a lawyer and he's well qualified. And I also hear that he's a very good debater. And so he knows how to communicate. He just either chooses not to, or he's not trusted by the people on the board, which means that he doesn't have any agency of his own and he's just basically a stand-in for somebody else's. Well, he's just a chess piece getting pushed on somebody else's board. But that in itself is worrying. Law, I think, has always been vulnerable because Law, on the one hand, is telling us, and Law's defenders are telling us that he actually doesn't do anything. So if he doesn't actually do anything, then what are we paying him $100,000 a year for? That money could be vastly better spent than on a guy who doesn't actually do anything.
Definitely.
As I was saying on the chat earlier on, the cardboard cutout of Law will cost 60 quid. We can have that and we can take that to the AGM. And Nicholson can answer his own questions rather than have Log stand up and slag a blogger for asking Nicholson a question. You know, maybe Nicholson will have to speak for himself for a change. But the 60 quid cardboard cutout could do the job. If he doesn't actually do anything, then we could have that and save the $100,000. But if you believe that Law, if you, like me, don't believe for a second that a guy who was CEO for as long as he is and a guy who basically picked most of the senior executive at Celtic actually does do nothing and wields no power, which is tremendously hard to believe, then Law is vulnerable in that respect as well, because if he's the guy who briefed against Rodgers, then he's done anyway.
Like, you've got to be toast after that. And she says there has to be change. And just to finish up on Law, you read that statement, and as you says, it was non-executive chairman. They then dropped the non-executive, but he's now just chairman. You read that statement, he talks with him and his colleagues strategizing. Doesn't sound like a guy that's not involved.
It doesn't sound like a guy doing none. No, it does not.
Easiest piece to move, and
I think
it'll certainly be. It's not going to solve all issues. It needs to be wholesale, or at least as near as wholesale as you can get within reason. For you need some level of balance, but it'll certainly be the first one. If this board want to get any sort of slight bit of favour, that would be a good start. That would definitely be a good start to see.
And that's the thing, right? That's how you get Desmond. That's how you tackle Desmond, because Desmond's a minority shareholder. He may be the largest shareholder, but he's still a minority shareholder, and he shouldn't be able to push the board around like his chess pieces.
Yeah.
So the way you tackle Desmond isn't to spend £50 million or whatever it would cost to buy Desmond's shares. The way you tackle Desmond is to remove his hand-picked chess pieces and take them off the board, and you've nullified Desmond's power. If you appoint non-executive directors or executive directors who are only beholden to Desmond and don't feel like they have to listen to every word that Desmond says, then you don't need to buy Desmond out. You don't need to remove Desmond.
And that's the point I've made over and over and over, is that Desmond is very much an removable object. There's other ways that we can get representation by getting enough on the shares, but we've covered all that stuff. But yes, it's removing people, and it maybe sounds a bit fanciful because, history has shown otherwise with the way Celtic do business. However, if this fan movement gathers enough traction and it forces change and people are losing their jobs and rightfully so and moved out the door, then it would be ridiculous of somebody like Desmond or whatever to just handpick and parachute in another person who would do the exact same thing, because change has to be actual change.
Yes, it does.
If it's going to be wholesale, it can't be doing the exact same thing again, because guess what? The cycle will just continue and you will continually have to get through it. So, but hopefully we move these people on and we get some real change. But we're done with the board. Neil, I've kept you nearly an hour and a half and I've seen folk are asking. I just thought a wee bit of goodwill here. Celtic going to a game against Partick Thistle. Rangers have a tricky game against Hibs. Maybe they'll wear the Hibs some more of that. Be a good laugh. Are you feeling better about the football the weekend, James? Are you feeling that's...
I'm just glad the football's back, mate. I'm just glad it's back. International fortnight always feels long, but I don't know how we got through that one. Genuinely don't know how we got through that one. I think it was it Lennon who said there are decades when nothing happens and there are weeks where decades happen, and that's what it felt like. God almighty, man.
How do you think the boys will fare? We need an improved. Let's be honest. Some of the scores are coming 2-0, 6-0, like that, 3-1.
I think it'll be comfortable. I think it'll be a comfortable win. Rodgers has obviously tried to alter the team a wee tiny bit. He's obviously trying to alter the way we play because he's not got the players to make his system work the way he wants it. So he's still tweaking stuff and he's still trying to work out what works. Rodgers will get there because Rodgers is too good not to get there. Rodgers will work it out. Rodgers will figure out how he gets to play that style of football. And I'm sure we will be a lot more comfortable in terms of watching the football than we are right now. How the mob across the city are going to do, I could not even predict that. I have a sneaky feeling that Hibs will beat them. It's what kind of consequences that has for their manager and for their season. As you say, the concern is, and it's not, it shouldn't really be a concern that if they sack this guy, then they'll bring somebody in who will at least improve the results a bit. But I said earlier in the summer, when you were looking at the players that they were signing, that if they had been signed by a Hearts or a Hibs, you would be like, so what? You know what I mean? You'd be like, so what?
Yep.
English League One players and Championship players and free transfers and all that, and all these like English players brought in on loan, you'd have been like, big deal. If they were Hearts signings, everybody would be like, talking about Tony Bloom's analytics, but nobody would be talking about how brilliant a side he'd assembled. Nobody would be talking about challenging Celtic. So I don't know what good they think swapping Russell Martin out for somebody else is going to do. The person's going to have to inherit that squad, and I don't see anything to worry about in that squad.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see. I'd like to see.
If Rodgers gets us playing the right football, we'll be all right until January anyway, and then he can reevaluate. And if maybe our board will spend some money for a change.
I know. Imagine that. Pieces broken out. Here's 3 new signings, a new contract for Rodgers and Peter Law at the door. That'd be a good start. That looks up piece to me. That looks up piece to me. So before we leave, I'll put you in the spot. You're confident it's going to be a nice return to form. Dare you hazard a wee score prediction for us?
4-0, I think. 4.
And just to put you on the spot for shits and gigs, or bents, as they say, the kids will say bents. What about Ibrox? What about Rangers? What is their score going to be?
2-1 Hibs.
I'll take
2-1
that.
Hibs. If they show up and they play the kind of football that they played in Europe, especially, and that boy they've got up front turns up and plays his game, he's one to watch. Definitely one to watch.
Yeah, definitely. Well, listen,
there was a lot of talk that we might have made a move for him in the summer. It would have been very early, and I think he's still got a lot to prove. He's had a good season last season, and he started this season brilliantly. But he's still got a ways to go. But he's definitely one worth watching. It's the most excited I've been about a Scotland striker, a striker for the national team for a long time.
But then Celtic would run away for the fee. Let's be honest.
Probably would. We would have to pay the Celtic tax because it was a Scottish team and we're buying them for. But if you believe in the player and you believe the player's got it, then you pay it.
Well, listen, thank you very much, James. We've been nearly an hour and a half. There's nearly about 170 currently watching, which is absolutely delightful stuff at this time on a Friday night. I'm sure I could be doing a lot better things to do than sit and listen to us, but we greatly appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't done already. Get yourself and follow the good work and the written word, the power of the written word of Mr. James Horace's Celtic blog. I'm sure you'll have plenty coming out. Plenty of content based off of those statements and that there.
The Morris stuff has basically written itself between the results coming out, the statements that the chairman and the CEO made, and Barry Ferguson greeting because Brendan was bad to him at the press conference today.
I know. I saw. You know, it was funny. I thought just to finish on that so briefly, I thought Brendan was a class act today.
Absolutely amazing. It was.
He covered many bases with class, and it was really interesting to see the wee tiny bits that people latch on and try to spin off as being something else. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Well, listen, thank you very much, James, for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Welcome back, and we shall hopefully do this again at some point. I look forward to hearing more of your musings on all of this stuff in the written form. I'm sure I'll be entertained as always with that. So listen, take care of yourselves. Thank you again, James, for joining us. We'll catch up at some stage, no doubt, later on. Until everybody else, till the next time, enjoy football when it comes round. We'll be back for after that. But until then, take care. God bless. And as always, hail, hail. See you later. Bye-bye.